My dears, you won't believe what happened inside this very house. My house, my safe little English home that has kept so many secrets over the years. If I tell you the whole truth, you may think I'm exaggerating, but no. I assure you, everything I say tonight is true. And if you're listening now, make sure you stay with me until the very end. Don't wander off. Don't let your mind drift, because what I'm about to reveal will shake your heart. And while you're here with me, I would be so grateful if you clicked that little subscribe button down there, and the like button too. It tells me you care for these old stories, these painful memories of mine, and it gives me the courage to go on. Now, let me begin. It started with a sound, a faint creak that echoed through the hallway of my house late one evening. I was sitting in my chair by the fire, the flames dancing lazily in the grate, and the house. The house was far too still. You know when silence grows too heavy, when it presses down on your shoulders until you're forced to notice every tiny disturbance. That's how it felt. That single creak was enough to pull me out of my thoughts. At first, I thought it was nothing. Old houses do that, don't they? They groan and whisper like old women themselves. But then, I heard another sound, a faint clink of metal, followed by hurried whispers, and my heart. It tightened in my chest, because I knew exactly where those whispers were coming from. The closet, my closet, the one at the end of the corridor on the second floor. That closet was no ordinary place, you see. My son and daughter-in-law, James and Clara, they had often eyed it with a curiosity they thought I didn't notice. But I did. Mothers always notice. I saw the way Clara's sharp eyes lingered on the old brass key I kept hidden under a vase in the sitting room. I saw the way James fidgeted, pretending not to care, but secretly aching to know what lay behind that closet door. You see, children, that closet had been locked for decades. It was not just a closet of coats and shoes. Oh no, it was a vault of memories, a cage for secrets, a door that led to more than they could ever imagine. And perhaps I was foolish to let my son grow up in this house, without ever telling him what was hidden there. But secrets protect people as much as they destroy them. I thought I was protecting him. I thought I was keeping him safe from greed, from temptation, from the shadows of our family's past. But that night, they broke in. My own son, my own daughter-in-law. My steps were soft, slower than they used to be, but still I climbed the stairs. The wood moaned beneath my slippers as I approached the corridor. The whispers grew louder. Clara's voice, sharp as a knife. Quickly, James, before she wakes up. She won't know a thing. Just find the gold and we'll be gone before she notices. Gold? That's what they thought. That's what their greedy little minds had cooked up. That somewhere in that closet, I had hidden away bars of gold, trinkets of fortune, jewels I had hoarded in my widowhood. And maybe, in a way, they weren't entirely wrong. But what they didn't know, what they could never have guessed, was that the closet led somewhere else entirely. I leaned against the wall, listening, torn between anger and heartbreak. My son, my only child, plotting with his wife to steal from me, his old mother. Do you know that kind of pain? It isn't the sharp sting of betrayal. No, it's heavier. It drags you down, presses your ribs until you cannot breathe. And still, I listened. The key scraped against the lock. They had found it. I should have hidden it better, shouldn't I? I should have buried it deep in the garden or cast it into the river. But I kept it here, close, as if the house itself begged me not to let go of its secrets. Turn it, James. Hurry, Clara hissed. And then, a click. The door creaked open, a sound so loud in the silence of the night it felt like thunder. And then came the gasp. Clara's gasp. Oh my God. James, look at this. I knew what they were seeing. At first glance, it looked like a closet lined with shelves, old coats, boxes, a few dusty shoes. But if one looked closer, there was a panel, a wooden plank at the back of the closet, different from the rest. lighter in color, smoother, as though it had been replaced. And if one pressed against it, the wall would give way. I stepped closer, my heart hammering. I wanted to shout, to stop them, but I couldn't. My voice caught in my throat. Maybe some part of me wanted them to see. Maybe I wanted them to know the truth. James must have found the panel, because I heard the low thud of wood sliding, followed by another sharp intake of breath, and then Clara's voice again, trembling but filled with greed. James, it's a room. A whole room back here. Quick, bring the light. The room. My hidden room. For 50 years I had kept it secret, a chamber built by my late husband before the war. A room that held treasures. Yes, but not the kind they were expecting. They stepped inside, and I heard the shuffle of their feet on the stone floor, the clatter of something falling, a box perhaps, and then silence, a silence so deep it was as though the house itself held its breath. I pushed myself forward then, leaning heavily on my cane, and I reached the open closet. The sight before me made my knees weak. There they were, standing in the dim light of a torch, eyes wide and mouths agape. Piles of old trunks, velvet sacks spilling with jewels, gold coins glittering in the faint light, paintings stacked against the wall, and in the far corner, a chest carved with symbols they could never understand. My treasures, my family's legacy, the things I had sworn to protect until my dying day. Mother, what is this? James finally whispered, his voice a mixture of awe and fear. I looked at him, my own son, trembling like a child before me, and I felt tears sting my eyes. This, I said softly, is what you were never meant to find. But oh my dears, that was only the beginning, because hidden among the treasures were things far darker than gold and jewels. Letters, maps, documents tied with red ribbon, and one particular diary bound in black leather that, if opened, would unravel the truth about who we really were and why this house, this very house, was built. So before I tell you what happened next, before I tell you about the curse that was written inside those pages, I must ask you, my dear listeners, to stay with me. Don't leave just yet. If you want to hear how my son and daughter-in-law's greed turned into terror that very night, make sure you subscribe right now. Yes, do it, so you don't miss what comes next, because the story is about to grow much darker. And perhaps some of you listening will think twice about prying into your grandmother's secrets, because sometimes what lies behind locked doors is not meant to be found. I stood there in the doorway, leaning on my cane, staring at my son and his wife, as they stood frozen in the glow of that small torchlight. The air inside the hidden room felt different, heavier somehow, like time itself had been trapped inside those stone walls. The treasures glittered, yes, but there was something else in that room, something invisible yet suffocating. You could almost taste it, the mixture of dust, age, and secrets that had been buried for decades. James turned back to me, his face pale, his hands shaking. Mother, why? Why did you keep this from me? From us? Oh, how foolish he sounded, as though I owed him every secret of my life, as though the weight of the past was his to bear. I shook my head slowly. You shouldn't be here, James. Neither of you. That door was never meant to be opened. But Clara's eyes burned with a hunger I had seen in many faces before. Greed, sharp and poisonous. She pushed past James and knelt before one of the trunks. Her fingers tore at the old leather straps until they snapped, and then she lifted the lid and her gasp echoed against the stone. Gold coins, hundreds of them, piled high, spilling into her lap as though fortune itself had chosen her. She laughed. Oh, that laugh, shrill and terrible, as the coins slipped between her fingers. We're rich, James. Do you see? We'll never need to work again, never need to live under her roof. This is ours now. Ours. She said ours, not mine, Not James's. Not even ours as a family. Hers. Her voice dripped with possession, with triumph. James hesitated, his eyes darting between the coins, the jewels, and me. For a brief moment, I saw the boy he once was. The boy who used to hold my hand as we walked through the orchard. The boy who used to press flowers into my palm and say, "For you, Mum." That boy was still inside him, but fading, replaced by a man who had forgotten gratitude, who had allowed his wife's hunger to twist his heart. "Mother," he said again, more firmly now, "why keep all this locked away? Why live modestly when you had all this?" I laughed then, a hollow, bitter laugh. "Because, James, treasures like these destroy families. I've seen it happen. I lived through it, and I swore I would never let it happen to you, to us. But my words, oh, they fell like ashes." Clara ignored me, her hands busy prying open another chest. This one was different. Carved with dark wood, marked with symbols she did not recognize. My breath caught. "No, not that one. She must not open that one. Stop!" I cried, my voice louder than it had been in years. My cane slammed against the stone floor, echoing through the room. Both of them froze. Clara looked up, her hands still gripping the edge of the chest, her face lit with defiance. "Why?" she sneered. "What are you hiding in here, old woman? More jewels? More of your selfish hoard?" I stepped forward, my hands trembling. "That chest is not like the others. Inside it is something far more dangerous than gold. Letters, diaries, truths that you are not ready to hear." But Clara, she only laughed again, mocking, and with one swift motion, she flung open the chest. The air in the room shifted. Even James seemed to feel it. A coldness that crept from the chest like smoke, curling around our ankles, seeping into our lungs. Inside was no glitter of jewels, no gleam of gold. Instead, stacks of papers bound with ribbon, faded photographs, and at the very top, a black leather diary. Clara's smile faltered. "What is this? Just papers?" My heart ached as I looked at that diary. It was my husband's, the one he kept during the war. Pages filled not just with memories, but with the story of how he came into possession of these treasures. Not through honest work, not through inheritance, but through blood. I whispered, more to myself than to them. He wanted it destroyed. He begged me to burn it before he died. But I couldn't. I couldn't let his memory vanish. James stepped closer, his brow furrowed. He picked up the diary, his fingers brushing against the cracked leather. "What do you mean?" Before I could stop him, he opened it. The first page crackled in the silence. His eyes scanned the words, and I saw his face pale further. "Clara, these aren't just notes. This is confession." I closed my eyes. Yes, confession. My husband, his father, had not been the man James thought he was. During the war, he had betrayed men for fortune. He had stolen, smuggled, even worse. Each coin, each jewel in this room was tainted. It was no treasure. It was a curse. Clara snatched the diary from James's hands, flipping through the pages greedily. She read aloud words she could barely comprehend, stories of betrayal, of death. This can't be true. He was a soldier, a hero. "No!" I shouted, my voice breaking. Tears streamed down my cheeks. He was no hero. He was a coward who chose gold over loyalty, jewels over lives. And I bore the weight of his sins. I locked them away, hoping they would never touch you. James dropped the torch then, and the light flickered violently as it rolled across the floor. His hands clutched his head. All my life, I thought. He choked on his words. But Clara, Clara's hunger was stronger than truth. She tossed the diary aside and plunged her hands into another trunk, pulling out pearls, rings, crowns once belonging to families long gone. "I don't care what he did. This is ours now. All of it. Do you hear me, James? We'll sell it, we'll run, we'll be free." Her voice echoed, bouncing off the stone walls. But it was not freedom she spoke of. It was damnation. I sank to my knees, my frail body trembling with the weight of it all. "Don't you see?" I whispered, my voice ragged. "This treasure killed your father. It will kill us too. Nothing good comes from stolen blood gold." But neither of them listened. The room was filled with the sound of jewels clinking, papers rustling, and my sobs. And then came the sound that silenced us all. A thud, deep, heavy, from the far wall of the room. James froze. Clara's hands stilled. We all turned. The wall, the old stone wall behind the chests, had shifted, as though something had pushed from the other side. Dust fell in thin streams. And then, another thud. I gasped. It had begun. The curse. The one my husband had written about in those pages. The one I prayed would never awaken. "James," I whispered, clutching his sleeve. "We must go. Now, lock this room. Seal it forever." But Clara's eyes were wide, glinting with both fear and determination. What is that? Is there more back there? Another chamber? More treasure?" She ran toward the wall, ignoring my cries, ignoring James's desperate attempt to hold her back. She pressed her hands against the stone, searching, pushing. The wall groaned, cracked, and then a sliver of darkness opened like a wound. A cold wind rushed through, extinguishing the torch. We were left in darkness, except for the faint glow of the jewels. And in that darkness, a sound, low, whispering, not from us, not human. My heart pounded in my chest. I knew then the past had awakened, and my son and his wife, in their greed, had unleashed something far worse than they could ever imagine. But, my dears, if you wish to hear what came through that wall, if you wish to know what my family's darkest secret truly is, then you must stay with me. Don't forget to like this story, share it with your friends, and leave a comment below. Tell me, would you dare to open a locked closet if you knew it might hold both fortune and a curse? I want to hear your thoughts, because what came through that wall, it changed everything. My dears, when that wall cracked open and the air turned cold as winter itself, I knew that night would mark the end of life as we knew it. The treasures around us glittered, like they were mocking us, like each coin and jewel carried a ghost of the souls it had been taken from. My son and his wife, blinded by greed, could not hear it. But I could. I could hear the whispers of the past. It was faint at first, like the sound of distant voices carried by the wind. They came from that slit in the wall, curling out into the room like smoke. Clara froze, her hands still pressed against the stone, her chest rising and falling fast. "James, did you hear that?" James swallowed hard, his hand gripping my arm. He had grown pale, his lips trembling. "Mother, what is that?" My voice shook as I spoke, each word tasting like ash. "It is what I tried to protect you from, James. The treasure is cursed. It carries the cries of the people your father betrayed. Every coin, every jewel, every stolen crown, they are marked. And when disturbed, the voices return. But Clara, oh Clara, she was not one to listen. Her eyes shone with a terrible mix of fear and excitement. Cursed? Don't be ridiculous. This is history. This is power. We can sell this, James. Do you understand? We'll be untouchable." She shoved her hand further into the crack, pushing at the stones until the opening widened with a groan that sent dust raining over us. The cold grew sharper and the whispers louder. They weren't just voices now. They were words, murmurs in languages long dead, prayers, cries, accusations. I fell back, clutching my chest. "Clara, stop. You don't know what you're doing." But she ignored me. Then suddenly James cried out. He yanked Clara back, just as a rush of wind burst from the opening, extinguishing the torch completely. The room plunged into darkness. Only the faint glow of a golden chalice reflected the dim moonlight, seeping in through the high crack in the cellar window. And then, my dears, then we heard it, footsteps, from the other side of the wall, slow, heavy, dragging. Clara screamed and stumbled back into James's arms. I felt every hair on my body rise as the sound grew louder. Not footsteps of the living, no. They were too uneven, too hollow. James clutched me tight, his voice breaking. Mother, what have we done? I wanted to comfort him, to tell him it would be all right, but I couldn't lie. Not anymore. You have awoken what should never have been touched. The crack widened on its own now, as though invisible hands were pushing from the other side. Stones fell, one by one, clattering against the floor, and in the gap, for just a moment, I saw it. A face. Not of flesh, but of shadow. Hollow eyes, mouth open in a silent scream. It vanished as quickly as it came, but I will never forget it. Clara's defiance shattered then. She clung to James, sobbing. Close it, please. But it was too late. The wall gave way with a thunderous crash, revealing a second chamber beyond, larger, darker, filled with shelves and relics cloaked in cobwebs. And in the center, a figure, not alive, not dead. It was a suit of armor, blackened with age, its helmet tilted forward, its gauntlet resting on a rusted sword. At first, it seemed still, just another relic of the past. But then, the head rose, slowly, painfully, and the hollow eye sockets turned toward us. Clara shrieked and stumbled back into a pile of coins, sending them scattering across the floor. James's grip on me tightened until I thought my arm would snap. My breath caught, my lips trembling with a prayer I hadn't spoken in years. The whispers grew louder, filling the chamber until they seemed to come from every wall, every jewel, every stone, accusing, demanding James. I whispered urgently, "Take me out of here. We must leave. Now." But he stood frozen, transfixed by the figure in the armor. His voice was barely audible. "Mother, is it him? Is it Father?" My heart shattered. No, it could not be. But the thought had crossed my mind as well. Could my husband's sins have tethered his soul here, chained to the wealth he had stolen? The armored figure shifted, the sword screeching against the stone floor as it dragged forward. One step, then another. The sound echoed like thunder in the small chamber. "James," I cried, my voice cracking. "Do not look at it. Get us out!" Finally, as though waking from a trance, James pulled me toward the doorway. Clara scrambled after us, tripping on jewels, clutching a string of pearls even as she sobbed. Always greedy, even in terror, we stumbled out of the room, into the corridor, gasping for breath. But before James could slam the closet door shut, a voice rang out behind us. Not a whisper this time. A voice, deep, hollow, agonized. "Thieves, betrayers." The sound clawed at my bones, made my ears ring with pain. Clara covered her ears and screamed, dropping the pearls. James slammed the closet shut, fumbling with the key, locking it tight. The house shook, as though something on the other side had thrown itself against the door. Silence fell again, a silence so thick it felt like death itself had pressed against the walls. We collapsed on the floor of the corridor, our breaths ragged, our bodies trembling. James looked at me with tears streaming down his cheeks. "Mother, what was that? What did we unleash?" I cupped his face with my trembling hands. The truth, the past, and now, it will never rest again. Clara sat against the wall, rocking, muttering to herself. Her greed was gone now, replaced by madness. "It's ours. It's still ours. It can't hurt us if we take it." She repeated it over and over like a broken doll. And me? I sat in silence, staring at that locked door, knowing it would not hold forever. So, my dear listeners, tell me, if you had been in that chamber, If you had seen the face in the shadows and heard the voice that carried death itself, what would you have done? Would you run? Would you take the jewels anyway? Or would you have listened to an old woman's warnings from the start? Leave me your answer in the comments below. I want to know what your heart tells you. And don't forget to subscribe, because this story is not over. No, my dears, what came after was far worse. For once the past is awakened, it will follow you everywhere. The house, oh my dears, the house was never the same after that night. You see, when something ancient awakens, when the silence of decades is broken, the walls themselves begin to breathe differently. Every creak of the wood, every groan of the pipes, every draft through the windows. It no longer feels like a house simply settling into the night. No, it feels like the house is watching you. That's what I felt in the days that followed, watched, judged, hunted. James tried to carry on as if nothing had happened. He told himself, and me, that we had imagined it, that the fear had played tricks on our minds, that the figure in the chamber was just an old relic, shifting with age. But his eyes betrayed him. Every time a floorboard cracked, every time the wind howled, he jumped. His hands shook when he held his tea. His nights grew restless, and shadows beneath his eyes grew darker with each passing morning. And Clara, oh, Clara was far worse. She was consumed. That cursed room had dug its claws into her soul. While James tried to forget, she could not stop remembering. I would wake at night and hear her footsteps creeping down the hall, hear the faint scrape of her fingers against the locked closet door. I would hear her whispering, calling, as though the jewels themselves were answering her from behind the wood. One night I confronted her. I found her crouched before the closet, her hair wild, her eyes bloodshot. Her fingers traced the brass keyhole, like it was the face of a lover. Clara, I said softly, my voice quivering with both pity and dread. You must leave that door alone. Haven't you seen enough? Haven't you felt what lives behind there? She turned to me then, slowly. Her face twisted in something between fury and desperation. It's mine. Do you hear me? It's mine. You've kept it from us all these years. You selfish old woman. You had everything while we struggled. And now that I've found it, you can't take it away from me. Her voice cracked on the last word, and her hands clawed at her own dress. I wanted to scream at her, to remind her that it was James's father who had stolen that fortune, not me, that I had carried the shame of it in silence, so that James could grow up believing in honor. But I knew it was useless. Greed had already hollowed her out, and reason could not fill what greed had emptied. Instead, I whispered, Clara, that treasure cost your father-in-law his soul. Do you want to share his fate? Her eyes flickered with something, fear perhaps, but only for a second. Then she hissed at me, like a snake defending its den, and she fled into the dark, muttering to herself, her bare feet slapping against the wooden stairs. I didn't follow. My body was too weak, my heart too heavy. I could only pray. The next morning, James avoided my eyes at breakfast. He saw the way Clara stared at nothing, spoon unmoving in her porridge, lips whispering words he couldn't hear. He wanted to pretend she was just tired, that everything would return to normal. But I saw the truth. Clara was slipping away from us, and the house knew it. The whispers grew louder, not just in the hidden chamber, no. They seeped into the hallways, into the sitting room, into the very walls of my bedroom. Sometimes, when I closed my eyes, I heard voices calling my name. Sometimes they called James's, sometimes Clara's. One night, I awoke to the sound of crying. Not Clara, not James, but a child's cry. Soft, fragile, like the wail of a baby who had been left alone. My heart nearly stopped. I knew that sound. I had heard it years ago, during the war, in the villages where my husband had taken what was not his. I had heard it when mothers clutched empty blankets, their babies gone. I covered my ears, rocking in my bed like a frightened child. "Leave us alone," I whispered into the darkness. "Haven't you taken enough?" But the cries did not stop. When morning came, Clara looked at me with wide, trembling eyes. "Did you hear it?" she whispered. I said nothing. Her lips curled into a smile, a terrible smile. "They're calling me. They want me. The treasure belongs to me. Even they know it." And then she laughed, a hollow, shrill laugh that chilled me to the bone. James could take no more. That evening, as the sun set and the house turned crimson in its glow, he burst into my room. His eyes were wild, his voice desperate. "Mother, tell me the truth. All of it. What really happened to Father? Where did this fortune come from?" I wanted to shield him even then. He was my boy, my only boy. But the time for shielding had long passed. I told him everything. How his father had betrayed his fellow soldiers. How he had bartered lives for gold. How he had smuggled relics stolen from broken families. And how, when the war ended, he returned not with pride, but with blood-soaked wealth. James fell to his knees, his hands covering his face. His sobs tore through me like knives. All my life I believed in him. All my life I thought I came from honor. I laid a trembling hand on his shoulder. "You came from me, James. From me, and I tried to give you a life untouched by his sins. But greed has found its way back to us." Clara appeared in the doorway then, her face pale, her eyes fever bright. She was holding something. A coin. One of the cursed coins. She must have stolen it from the chamber before we locked it. "Honor," she sneered. "What use is honor when we could have all this? Do you know how much this one coin is worth, James? Do you know what it could buy us?" James looked at her, as though seeing her for the first time. His voice broke. "It will buy us death, Clara. Don't you understand? We've already awoken something we cannot control." But she only clutched the coin tighter, whispering to it, rocking like a mother with a babe. "It's mine. It's mine." And then, my dears, the lights flickered. Every lamp, every candle, snuffed out at once. The house plunged into darkness. And in that darkness, we heard them. The footsteps. The dragging, hollow footsteps. This time, not behind the wall. No, this time they were inside the house. Clara screamed and dropped the coin. James grabbed my arm, pulling me close. We huddled together, our breaths ragged, as the sound drew nearer. Down the hallway, across the floorboards, up the stairs, closer, closer. And then, at my bedroom door, silence. We didn't breathe. We didn't move. And then slowly, the handle turned. My dears, if you're listening now, don't forget to press that subscribe button. Don't leave me here in this darkness alone. Like this story, if your heart is pounding like mine was that night. And tell me in the comments, what would you have done if the dead themselves came to your door? Would you open it? Or would you pray it passes you by? Because when that handle turned, oh, it was only the beginning of the true haunting. The handle turned slowly, painfully slowly, as though the thing on the other side wanted us to hear every click of metal, every scrape of iron against the latch. My heart hammered in my chest. James clutched my arm so tightly, I thought he might crush the bone, and Clara whimpered in the corner like a child. The door creaked open, inch by inch, and the cold air that followed made my breath cloud in front of me. But my dears, when the door opened fully, there was no one there, only the long dark hallway, stretching into shadows that seemed deeper than night itself. Clara sobbed. "It's gone, it's gone." But I knew better. It wasn't gone. It had entered. I whispered to James, my voice trembling. "Shut the door, quickly." He moved slowly, cautiously, as though any sudden movement might provoke whatever invisible presence had slipped inside. When the door shut again, we sat there in silence, the darkness pressing against us like a heavy shroud. And then came the sound, whispers, not faint anymore, clear, direct, right there in the room with us. They weren't in English. They weren't in any language I had ever learned. But I understood them all the same. You don't need to know the tongue of the dead to feel their meaning. They accused. They mourned. They demanded. Clara screamed, covering her ears, rocking back and forth on the floor. James held me, his body trembling, his tears soaking into my shoulder. And me, I felt a pain I cannot describe, for the voices were not only strangers. No, among them I heard him, my husband, his voice cut through the others, deeper, heavier, carrying the weight of his crimes. Elizabeth, he groaned, my name, my cursed name in his mouth once more. I gasped, clutching my chest. No, not you. I buried you. I prayed for you. But his voice only grew louder, overlapping with the others, filling every corner of the room. You kept it. You should have burned it. You let it live. And now it comes for all of us. James pulled back, staring at me in horror. Mother, is it true? Did he ask you to burn it all? Tears blurred my sight, and I nodded weakly. He begged me on his deathbed. He said the gold would never let him rest. But I couldn't do it, James. I couldn't destroy his life's work, even if it was built on sins. I was a coward, and now we are all paying the price. Clara shrieked then, louder than the whispers. Her voice filled with rage. She leapt to her feet and ran to the wardrobe, clawing at the lock. If it's cursed, then we should take it all. If it kills us, at least we'll die rich. James lunged after her, grabbing her wrists. Clara, stop. They struggled, their bodies colliding against the wooden frame, the sound of their fight mixing with the whispers. The wardrobe rattled, the keyhole glowing faintly as though lit from within. My cane slipped from my hands, and I crawled forward, my voice raw with desperation. Stop this! Both of you! Don't you see? The treasure doesn't belong to us. It never did. It belongs to the dead, and they've come to take it back. But my words were drowned in the chaos. Clara bit James's hand, breaking free, and her nails scraped against the brass keyhole. And then, silence. Every whisper ceased. The house held its breath. Even Clara froze, her chest heaving, her face drenched in sweat. And then the keyhole began to bleed. Yes, my dears, blood, thick and black, oozing from the brass, running down the wood, dripping onto the floor. Clara screamed and stumbled back, slipping on the slick stain. James pulled her to him, both of them wide-eyed with terror. The whispers returned, louder than ever, a cacophony of voices crying in unison. And then the door, the cursed door, burst open. A wind like a storm roared through the room, tearing the curtains from their rails, sending papers and coins flying through the air. We shielded our faces as the force threatened to pull us into the dark chamber beyond. And then it appeared, not the armor we had seen before, not just shadows, but a figure, tall, cloaked, faceless. Its form shimmered like smoke, its edges frayed as though it were unraveling from reality itself. But its presence, oh, it was heavier than stone. My lungs felt crushed beneath it. It pointed at us, not with a hand, not with flesh, but with something darker. James shouted over the roar. What does it want, Mother? I could barely speak, my lips trembling, my lungs burning. It wants what was taken. It wants the treasure. And it wants our blood for keeping it. Clara shrieked and threw herself at the floor, scrambling for the coin she had dropped earlier. She held it high, screaming into the void. You can't take it. It's mine. Do you hear me? It's mine. The figure moved closer. The temperature dropped so sharply. Frost spread across the windows, across the very walls. The floor beneath Clara cracked with ice. She screamed again, her voice breaking, but still, she clutched that cursed coin. James dragged me backward, shielding me with his body. He was pale, shaking, but determined. Mother, we have to get out, now. But I knew we couldn't simply leave, not with the curse awakened, not with the treasure still in this house. I looked into my son's eyes. the boy I had once cradled, the man I had raised, and whispered, "The only way out is to give it all back, every last piece." But Clara's shrieks drowned my words. She was writhing on the floor now, the coin pressed so tightly into her palm that blood dripped from her clenched fist. She rocked, sobbing, laughing, her mind fractured. "It's mine, mine!" The cloaked figure loomed over her, its faceless void bending low, as though breathing in her very soul. And then, my dears, it spoke, not with words, with a sound like every scream of the battlefield, layered into one. Clara's body convulsed, her back arching, and then she went still. James howled in horror. I clutched him tight, my body shaking with grief and dread. But Clara did not rise again. Only her hand twitched, still clutching the coin. The figure straightened, its void-like face turning toward us, and then it began to move. One step, another, each step rattling the house, shaking the very foundations. We were next, and that, my dears, is where I must pause. Because what happened next, even now, it makes my blood run cold. So please, if your heart has stayed with me this far, don't let go now. Subscribe, so you will not miss the rest of my tale. Like this story if you feel the fear pressing against your own skin, and share it with someone who dares to listen. And tell me in the comments, what would you do if the treasure itself demanded your blood? Because when that figure reached for us, our fate was sealed. The figure's steps echoed like the tolling of a funeral bell. Each time its foot fell, the house seemed to tremble. The beams groaned, the windows rattled, and the walls exhaled dust, as though even they feared to witness what came next. James held me so tightly that I could feel his pulse racing, hammering as frantically as my own. The cloaked form stopped just short of us. For a moment, nothing stirred. The air hung frozen, the silence so complete. I could hear the faint crackle of frost creeping up the wallpaper. Then, in one fluid motion, it extended its arm, that shadowy, half-formed limb, and pointed directly at me. I gasped, clutching my chest. The voices began again, but this time they weren't the chorus of many. No, they all became one. My husband's voice, his deep, sorrowful groan. "Elizabeth, you kept it when I begged you to burn it. You bound us all. You cursed this house. And now, you must pay." James staggered, staring at me in shock. "Mother, what is he saying? Is it true?" My tears fell freely, my hands trembling as I reached for his face. "James, listen to me. On your father's deathbed, he confessed everything. That the treasure was stolen, bought with the blood of men, women, and children. He begged me to destroy it, but I couldn't. I thought if I kept it safe, if I locked it away, then perhaps one day you might use it for good. I was a fool. I should have ended it. And now the curse has come for us all." James stepped back, his face torn between love and horror, his breath shallow. Clara lay still at our feet, her hand frozen around that cursed coin. The figure loomed closer, the faceless void bending low until it hovered inches from me. Its presence crushed me. The air ripped from my lungs. I whispered weakly, "If it's my life you want, then take it. But leave my son. Please, leave him." The figure tilted its head, as though considering my plea. And then, to my horror, it turned its faceless void toward James. "No!" I screamed, throwing myself between them. The whispers rose again, the voice of my husband crying out, "Blood must balance blood. Greed must meet its grave." James grabbed my arms, his eyes frantic. "Mother, what does it mean? What do we do?" I swallowed hard, my body trembling so violently I thought I might break apart. "It means one of us must pay. One of us must give our blood to free the rest. That is the only way." His face fell, and I saw the boy I once held in my arms, the child who clung to my skirts when thunderstorms frightened him. His lips trembled. His tears streaked his face. and still he said the words I dreaded most. Then it should be me. I slapped his face, not in anger but in desperate refusal. Don't you dare. You are my son, my only son. Your father's blood already stains this curse. It must end with me, not you. Never you. The figure loomed closer still, its arms stretching, the air colder than death. James clutched me, shaking his head violently. No, mother. If you die, I have nothing left. Clara is gone, and you are all I have. I won't let you leave me too. We clung to each other, sobbing, the figure's presence suffocating us. And then, something changed. The wardrobe, that cursed wardrobe, groaned as though alive. Its doors rattled, the wood splintering, and then, from within, objects began to pour forth. Coins, jewels, goblets, treasures of every shape and size, spilling out onto the floor in a flood of gold. But it wasn't beautiful. Oh no, my dears, for every piece that fell clinked against the floor with a sound not of metal, but of bone. And in the pile of riches, skulls and skeletons clattered among the jewels, the bones of those who had paid for this wealth with their lives. James fell to his knees, clutching his head. Dear God! The figure gestured toward the pile. The voices rose as one. Return what was taken. Blood for blood, riches for the grave. I knew then what had to be done. I crawled forward, my frail body trembling, and scooped a handful of the cursed treasure. My hands burned as though dipped in fire, but I did not let go. I turned to James, my eyes wet with tears. Help me, son. We must give it back, every last piece. Only then will it end. James stared at me, broken, but slowly he nodded. Together, we gathered the treasure, piece by piece, our hands blistering and bleeding as we touched it. We threw it back into the wardrobe, into the gaping void from which it came. The figure watched, silent but unrelenting, its faceless gaze upon us. Clara's body lay beside us, her lifeless hand still clutching that single coin. I hesitated, my heart breaking. James whispered, Mother, we need hers too. I nodded, sobbing, and gently pried her fingers open. Her flesh cracked like ice, her skin tearing as I freed the coin. With a trembling hand, I dropped it into the wardrobe. The moment it struck, the voices screamed in unison, 1,000 souls crying out as one. The house shook, the walls cracked, and for a moment I thought we would be swallowed whole. The figure's form unraveled, its shadowy body dissolving into smoke, its faceless void splitting open in a final piercing wail. And then, silence. The cold lifted, the whispers ceased, the treasure was gone. James and I collapsed onto the floor, gasping for breath, our bodies trembling from exhaustion and terror. Clara lay still, her body pale, frozen, beyond saving. My son held me close, his face pressed into my shoulder. Is it over? He whispered. I stared at the now empty wardrobe, its doors hanging open, nothing but darkness within. And though I prayed it was the end, though I begged it to be finished, a part of me knew, curses that old, that deep, never truly die. They sleep, they wait. I stroked James's hair, kissing his forehead as I had when he was a boy. For now, my darling, for now, it is over. But we must never forget what was done here. Never speak of it, never chase it again. Promise me. He nodded, sobbing into my chest. And so, my dears, that is how the curse of my husband's treasure was laid to rest. For now, at the cost of blood, at the loss of a life, and at the price of scars that will never heal. But still, when the house is quiet, when the night is too long and the wind too cold, I swear I hear the whispers again. So tell me, dear listeners, what would you have done? Would you sacrifice yourself for your child, or let the curse take its due? Leave your thoughts in the comments, for I read every one of them. And if my tale has chilled your heart, do not forget, Subscribe, like, and share so others may hear the truth of what greed awakens, the truth of what waits in the dark. For remember, the dead never forget. The morning light crept into the house, as though afraid to touch it. Weak, pale rays slipped through the broken curtains, falling upon the wreckage left behind. Coins scattered like the remnants of a nightmare, blood dried dark upon the floorboards, and Clara's body lying cold, her face frozen in the last terrible moment of her greed. James had not left her side all night. He sat slumped against the wall, his head resting in his hands, his shoulders heaving with sobs that came and went like waves, crashing against rocks. I sat in my chair by the window, my eyes fixed upon the wardrobe. Its doors still hung open, but the inside was nothing now but a void. Empty, unyielding, black as the grave. I dared not close it. I dared not touch it again. For hours we said nothing. The house seemed to breathe around us, every creak of the floorboards, every sigh of the wind through the chimney, making us flinch as though the whispers might return. But they did not. Only silence remained. At last, James spoke, his voice hoarse from crying. "Mother, what do we do about her?" His eyes flicked to Clara's lifeless form, and he choked on the words. I closed my eyes, my heart aching. "We must tell the truth, James, but not all of it. No one would believe us. They'd think us mad." His head snapped up, his eyes wild. "So what then? We say she died. How? The truth is worse than madness." I looked at him, my son, broken and trembling, his world shattered. I reached for his hand, my voice heavy with sorrow. "We say she had a fit, a seizure. Her heart failed. You fought to save her, but it was too late. That is what we say." His jaw clenched, his eyes burning with unshed tears. "And the treasure? The voices? The thing? Do we just pretend none of it happened?" I turned my gaze back to the wardrobe, my throat tightening. "Yes, my dear, we pretend. Because if the world learns of it, more greedy hands will come. More lives will be lost. Better to let the curse sleep again, hidden in these walls." James buried his face in his hands, his body racked with sobs once more. I stroked his hair gently, whispering as I had when he was a child. "Hush now, my darling. Hush, you're not alone. I'm still here. We'll endure this. Together." But even as I said it, I felt the weight of doubt pressing down upon me. Could such horrors ever truly be endured? Could we ever forget the screams, the blood, the faceless figure that had reached for our very souls? Later that morning, James fetched the doctor, old Dr. Harwood, who had known me since I was a young bride. He examined Clara with solemn eyes, his wrinkled hands moving gently over her still body. He looked at James, then at me, his face grave. "It appears her heart gave out," he said softly. "Stress, perhaps. Fear? I've seen it before. A terrible thing." I nodded, my lips pressed tightly together. James said nothing, only stood rigid, his hands trembling at his sides. The doctor placed a hand upon my shoulder, his eyes kind. "I'll make the report. The authorities will ask questions, but it will be written as natural causes. You have my word." I thanked him with all the grace I could muster, though my stomach twisted with guilt. Natural causes. What a cruel lie. There was nothing natural about the death that had taken place in that room. Word spread quickly, as it always does in small English towns. Neighbours came, whispering their condolences, their curious eyes darting toward the house, as though it might reveal its secrets. I smiled politely. I nodded. I accepted their sympathy. But inside, my heart burned with dread, for though the wardrobe now stood silent, I could still feel its presence, lurking, waiting. One evening, as I sat by the fire, James pacing the room like a caged animal, a knock came at the door. It was Constable Wright, a stout man with sharp eyes that missed nothing. He tipped his hat politely, but there was suspicion in his gaze. "Mrs. Whitmore," he said, his voice low. May I come in? I hesitated, then forced a smile and nodded. Of course, Constable. He stepped inside, his boots heavy upon the floorboards. His eyes flicked around the room, pausing on the stains that had not quite washed away. The broken curtain rails, the cracks in the walls. He said nothing of them, but his silence was louder than words. He sat across from me, his hat in his hands. There have been whispers, Mrs. Whitmore. Some say they heard strange noises from your house that night. Screams. And now your daughter-in-law is dead. James stopped pacing. His fists clenched at his sides. She had a heart attack, he said sharply. Constable Wright raised an eyebrow. So the doctor says, and yet, he leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. Tell me, Mrs. Whitmore, is there something you're not telling us? I felt James's gaze burning into me, pleading for me to hold my tongue. My hands trembled in my lap, but I forced myself to meet the constable's eyes. My daughter-in-law was troubled, sir. She had episodes, fits of panic, seizures. That night, one took her from us. There is nothing more to say. The constable studied me for a long moment, his eyes searching my face, as though he could peel back the layers of my soul. At last, he nodded slowly. Very well, but if there is something unnatural in this house, Mrs. Whitmore, I advise you to rid yourselves of it. Secrets have a way of rotting families from the inside. He tipped his hat and left, but his words lingered like a curse. Secrets rot families. And mine. Oh, mine was already decaying. That night, James broke. He threw himself at the wardrobe, pounding his fists against its wooden frame, screaming at the darkness within. You ruined her. You ruined everything. Take me too if you must. Take me. I rushed to him, clutching his arms, sobbing into his chest. Stop, James. Stop. It's over. Do not call it back. He fell to his knees, shaking with rage and grief, his tears soaking my nightgown. I can't live like this, Mother. I see her when I close my eyes. I hear the whispers. I smell the blood. How can you bear it? I stroked his hair, rocking him gently, though my own heart was breaking. Because I must. Because if I crumble, then you will be lost too. We must endure, James. We must. But even as I held him, I felt it. The faintest whisper, so soft, so distant, and yet unmistakable. From the wardrobe, Elizabeth, my husband's voice, calling me again. And in that moment, I knew it was not over. Not yet. So, my dear listeners, if you've walked this far with me through the shadows, tell me, do you think secrets can ever stay buried? Or do they always claw their way back to the surface, no matter how deep we hide them? Leave your thoughts in the comments, for I long to know. And if this tale still holds your heart, I beg you, subscribe, like, and share it, so that others may walk these dark halls with us. Because the curse was not finished. Not for me, not for James, not for this house. The whispers did not stop after that night. They were not constant. No, that would have been a mercy. Instead, they came in fragments, little cracks in the silence that split me open when I least expected it. A sigh in the hallway when I was alone, a faint chuckle when I poured my tea, a deep groan of my husband's voice when I closed my eyes in prayer. James heard them too. I could tell by the way he startled at shadows, by the way his eyes darted toward the wardrobe, even when it stood perfectly still. He tried to be strong, to mask his fear, but a mother knows her son. His nerves frayed more each day, his hands shook, his temper shortened, and yet the neighbors noticed nothing. They saw only a grieving young widower and his aging mother. They came with casseroles, with polite condolences, with questions tucked neatly beneath their words. I smiled. I nodded. I played the role of the sorrowful matriarch, but inside, I was rotting with secrets. One morning, I woke to find James already downstairs, staring at the wardrobe. His eyes were bloodshot, his face pale, his hair unkempt. He didn't notice me at first. His lips were moving, whispering to himself. "James?" I asked softly, my heart quickening. He turned slowly, his expression strange, distant, almost hollow. "They're calling me, Mother." I froze where I stood. "No, who is calling you?" He glanced back at the wardrobe, then back at me, his eyes wide. "Father, the others. They say I'm meant to finish what he started." A chill ran through me, sharper than any winter wind. "No, James, you mustn't listen. It's lies, all of it. The curse feeds on weakness, on guilt, on greed. You must resist it." But his lips curled into something that was not quite a smile. "Or perhaps it feeds on truth. Perhaps we've been running from what we are. Maybe Father wasn't cursed. Maybe he was chosen," I gasped, rushing to him, clutching his hands in mine. "Don't speak such madness. Your father was no chosen man. He was a thief, a murderer, and he paid dearly for it. Do not let his sins take you too." He yanked his hands away, his chest heaving. "Maybe you're the one who's blind. Maybe you kept it, not because you were afraid, but because you wanted it, because you liked having power over it. Tell me, Mother, when Father begged you to burn it, why didn't you?" My throat closed, my body trembling. Tears welled in my eyes as I whispered, "Because I was weak. Because I couldn't bear to destroy him completely. Because I thought perhaps one day it could be redeemed. I was wrong, James. So very wrong." His eyes searched mine, and for a fleeting moment, I thought I saw the boy I had raised. The boy who clung to my skirts and begged me for bedtime stories. But then the moment passed, and the shadows took him again. He turned away muttering, "Maybe redemption isn't what it wants. Maybe it wants continuation." I felt my knees weaken, my heart pounding with dread. For in that instant, I feared I had not only lost Clara to the curse, but James as well. The days that followed were filled with unease. James spent hours by the wardrobe, sometimes sitting in silence, sometimes whispering to it, sometimes scribbling notes in a leather-bound journal he refused to show me. I begged him to leave it alone, to come away, to go to the countryside for air. He only shook his head, his eyes fever bright. And then, as if fate itself sought to push us over the edge, the constable returned. It was evening when his knock came, firm, insistent, rattling the very frame of the door. James stiffened, his jaw tight, but I forced myself to greet our visitor with what little grace remained in me. "Constable Wright," I said, my voice steady, though my hands trembled. "What brings you back to us?" He removed his hat, his eyes sharp as ever. "Forgive the intrusion, Mrs. Whitmore, but I've had troubling reports. Neighbors claim to hear strange noises at night, screams, chanting. They say the old Whitmore house is haunted." James laughed bitterly behind me, a sound that chilled my blood. "Haunted? Is that what they think? How quaint." The constable's eyes flicked to him, narrowing. "I'd like to have a look around if you don't mind." I swallowed hard, forcing a smile. "Of course, sir, though you'll find nothing but dust and grief here." But James stepped forward suddenly, blocking his path. "There's nothing for you here. Leave." The constable's gaze hardened. "With respect, lad, you don't decide that. I do." He pushed past, his heavy boots echoing through the hall. I felt my heart climb into my throat as his eyes settled on the wardrobe. Its doors hung open still, dark and empty, but to me it radiated menace, like a wound that never heals. "What's this then?" he asked, stepping closer. Before I could answer, James snapped, his voice sharp as broken glass. "An old wardrobe, nothing more. You've seen it. Now leave." The constable turned slowly, his eyes narrowing on James. "You're hiding something, lad. I can smell it. And mark me, secrets don't stay buried long in this town." James's fists clenched at his sides, his body trembling with rage. For a moment, I thought he might strike the man. I rushed forward, placing myself between them. my voice trembling. Please, Constable. My son is fragile. We've suffered enough. I beg you, leave us to our mourning. The constable studied me for a long moment, then grunted. Very well, but I'll be back. And if there's something foul in this house, it will come to light. He tipped his hat and left, his heavy footsteps fading into the night. James stood rigid, his breath ragged, his eyes wild. He'll ruin everything, he hissed. He'll bring them all here. He'll wake it again. I grasped his arms, desperate to reach him. James, listen to me. We can still end this. We can leave this house. Leave the wardrobe behind. Let it rot with its secrets. But he shook his head violently, pulling away from me. No, you don't understand. It doesn't want us to leave. It wants us here. It chose us. And I think I'm ready to accept that. My blood ran cold, my heart breaking in my chest. James, no, please, don't let it take you. You're all I have left. But he only looked at me with that strange, hollow smile, his eyes reflecting the darkness of the wardrobe. And in that moment, I knew the curse was not merely haunting us. It was consuming him. That night, as I lay in bed, I heard it clearly. Not a whisper, not a groan, but a laugh, low, deep, and unmistakably my husband's. And worse still, I heard James laughing with him. So, my dear listeners, tell me, do you think James can be saved, or has the curse already claimed him? Share your thoughts in the comments, for I need to know if I am not alone in fearing the answer. And if this tale still chills you, please subscribe, like, and share, so others may hear it too. Because what came next was the beginning of the end. I hardly slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard them. My husband's laugh, James's laugh, the two of them mingling together like twisted echoes from the abyss. I pressed my pillow over my ears, but it did nothing. The sound was not in the air. It was in my bones. By morning, James was gone from his bed. I found him downstairs at the kitchen table, hunched over the leather-bound journal he had been scribbling in for days. His eyes were bloodshot, his hand cramped around the pen, his lips moving silently as he wrote. James, I whispered, my voice trembling. Come away, child. Eat something. Rest. But he didn't look up, didn't even blink, only muttered, I must record it. They're telling me everything. The family history. The truth we were denied. My stomach churned. What truth? At last, he lifted his head, his eyes gleaming with feverish light. That father was not the first. That the treasure in the wardrobe, the gold, the jewels. It is not mere wealth. It is an inheritance, a legacy passed down through generations. Each Whitmore must guard it. Each Whitmore must sacrifice to it. I shook my head violently, clutching the back of a chair to steady myself. No, lies. Your father said the same, and it destroyed him. James, listen to me. It is poison. Nothing more. But he smiled. That awful, hollow smile. If it were only poison, why would it endure? Why would it survive centuries? Don't you see, Mother? We are not cursed. We are chosen. And I will not turn away from it like you did. My heart shattered. But anger rose within me too. I turned away because I loved you. Because I wanted to protect you from the same madness that consumed your father. And look at you now. Gaunt, sleepless, possessed. Is that the legacy you want? To leave me alone, mourning you too. For a moment, his face softened. His eyes flickered with the boy I once knew. The boy who held my hand when storms frightened him. Who begged me for one more story at night. But then, like a flame snuffed out, the softness vanished. He lowered his gaze to the journal again, muttering, I cannot stop now. They've shown me too much. I wanted to snatch the book from him, to burn it in the hearth, to scream and shake him until he woke from the nightmare. But I did not, for I knew, if I pushed too hard, I might lose him forever. So instead, I waited. Days passed in a haze of dread. James grew thinner, his skin pale, His eyes ringed with darkness. He ate little, spoke less, and spent every waking moment by the wardrobe or with his journal. At night, I heard him pacing the hall, murmuring prayers that sounded more like incantations. And then, one night, I could bear it no longer. While he slept at the kitchen table, his head resting on his journal, I crept forward. My hands shook as I lifted the book, careful not to wake him. The leather was warm, unnaturally so, as though it held a pulse of its own. I opened it, and what I saw inside made my blood run cold. It was not merely James's handwriting. No, the ink changed halfway through. His neat, careful script gave way to a jagged, furious scrawl I knew all too well. My husband's hand. But how? He had been gone these many months, and yet there it was, page after page of words he had never written in life. My hands trembled as I read. It told of Whitmore's past, of a hidden society, bound by blood and gold, who believed the treasures were a covenant with forces older than the church itself. Each generation was tasked with guarding the hoard, feeding it with secrecy, and ensuring it grew. Those who faltered, those who betrayed the covenant, were consumed. And then the last entry, written in James's hand, but not in James's voice. She is weak. She always was. She kept me from greatness, from fulfilling what was promised. But James understands. James will not fail as I did. Together we will open the chamber fully. Together we will reign. I nearly dropped the book, bile rising in my throat. My husband's spirit had not merely haunted the wardrobe. It had taken root in our son. I clasped the journal to my chest, backing away, my tears blinding me. I had to act. If I didn't, James would be lost forever. But as I turned to flee, I stumbled against a loose floorboard. It creaked, and James stirred. His eyes opened slowly, fixing on me, and the look within them was not my son's. Not wholly. "Mother," he said softly, his lips curling into a chilling smile. Reading my words without permission, "Sk, sk." I tried to speak, but no words came. My throat was dry, my body frozen with terror. He stood, stretching his arms as though waking from a pleasant dream. "Don't you see now? Don't you understand? Father isn't gone. He's here, with me, guiding me. Together, we will restore the Whitmore legacy." Tears streamed down my face as I shook my head. "No, James, that is not your father. That is a demon wearing his skin. You must fight it. Please, child, fight it." But his laughter cut through me, cruel and sharp. "Fight it? No, I embrace it. And you should be proud. Your son will be greater than any Whitmore before him." My knees buckled, the journal slipping from my grasp. He picked it up, holding it to his chest like a holy relic. "Soon," he whispered, "the chamber will open, and when it does, the world will remember the Whitmores." I staggered back, my heart pounding, my body trembling. My son, my only son, was slipping beyond my reach, and I feared there was nothing I could do to stop it. So tell me, dear listeners, what would you do if the child you raised became the vessel of your husband's damned spirit? Would you fight him, save him, or let him go to his fate? Share your thoughts in the comments. I need to know if I am not mad and fearing the worst. And if this tale chills you still, subscribe, like, and share, because the darkest hour had yet to come. I knew it was coming, from the moment I read that journal, from the instant I saw my husband's handwriting, bleeding into my son's soul. I knew the end would arrive soon. I just did not know how quickly, or how brutally. The night of reckoning began with a storm. The wind howled against the house, rattling the windows, clawing at the shutters like some furious beast trying to break in. Rain lashed the panes, thunder shook the walls, and lightning lit the sky like God's own fury. And within our home, James moved like a man possessed. He carried candles into the drawing room, setting them in a circle around the wardrobe. He whispered words in a language I did not know, though they chilled me as if I had heard them in my nightmares. "James, stop this!" I cried, rushing forward. "You don't know what you're inviting." But he turned to me, his eyes blazing, and spoke with two voices, his own and my husband's, twisted together. "It is not an invitation, Mother. It is a birthright." I fell to my knees, clutching my rosary, praying aloud to drown out his words. "Lord, have mercy. Deliver us from evil." But the wardrobe groaned, its wood straining, its hinges rattling. A deep hum vibrated through the floorboards, spreading up into my bones. The candles flickered violently, their flames bending inward toward the wardrobe, as if drawn by an unseen breath. James lifted the journal high, his voice rising over the storm. "By blood, by bone, by Whitmore's hand. Open!" The wardrobe shuddered, and then the floor beneath it cracked. Dust rained down, plaster split from the walls, and with a sound like 1,000 voices screaming, the boards gave way, revealing a black hole beneath. The stench that rose from it was unbearable, a mixture of rot, sulfur, and ancient decay. My stomach lurched, bile burning my throat. From the depths came a faint golden glow, glimmering like treasure buried in the abyss. James's face lit with triumph. The chamber, at last. He moved to step inside, but I lurched forward, grabbing his arm. "No! You'll never return. James, please!" For a heartbeat he looked at me, truly looked at me, and in that instant I saw my son again, the boy I had raised, his eyes full of fear and love. He whispered, barely audible over the roar of the storm, "Mother, help me." My heart broke. Tears blurred my vision. "Then fight him, James. Fight him now." But before he could answer, his face contorted, twisted by my husband's cruel sneer. "He is mine," the voice snarled through James's lips. "You cannot have him." Rage unlike any I had ever known surged through me. I struck him, my own son, across the face. He stumbled back, clutching the journal tighter, his expression torn between fury and despair. "I will not lose you too," I screamed, and with every ounce of strength in my body, I snatched the journal from his hands and hurled it into the fiery hearth. James roared, a sound not human, but monstrous, echoing with two voices at once. He lunged toward the flames, but I threw myself against him, holding him back as the leather cracked and burned, the pages curling into ash. The wardrobe screamed. Yes, screamed, like a living creature being torn apart. The golden glow from the chamber flared brilliantly, then dimmed, then flared again. The storm outside rattled the house to its foundation. James writhed in my arms, clawing, kicking, weeping. "Mother, you're killing him. You're killing me." My tears drenched his shoulder, my arms aching as I held him tighter. "Then let it end, James. Let the curse die with us." The journal crumbled to nothing. The wardrobe splintered, its doors snapping free, its frame collapsing into the abyss below. And from that pit rose one final scream. My husband's voice, bellowing with rage and pain. Before vanishing into silence, the storm ceased. The wind died. The rain softened to a drizzle. James went limp in my arms. For one awful moment, I thought I had lost him. But then he stirred, his chest rising and falling, his eyes fluttering open. "Mother," he whispered weakly. I kissed his forehead, sobbing with relief. "Yes, child, I'm here." He clung to me trembling. "It's gone. He's gone." And so it was. The wardrobe was no more. The chamber beneath had collapsed, sealing itself with earth and ruin. The curse, or whatever dark force it had been silenced at last. But oh, my dear listeners, victory came at a cost. The house was broken, scarred by cracks and holes, its walls stained with smoke and age. James never truly recovered. His mind carried shadows, His body bore weakness. He left soon after, unable to remain within those haunted walls. I could not blame him. And me? I remained, alone in the Whitmore house, among the ruins of our legacy. I walk its halls still, my steps echoing in the emptiness, my heart heavy with memory. The curse is gone, yes, but the grief remains. The silence is deeper than ever. Sometimes late at night, I swear I still hear a laugh. Faint, distant, but real. Perhaps it is memory, perhaps not, but I pray, oh how I pray, that it stays buried where I cast it. So, my dear listeners, that is the end of my tale. My son and daughter-in-law broke into my closet for gold, but what they found was far worse. A secret room of treasures that were never meant to see the light of day. And though I destroyed it, though I ended it, the scars will never fade. If this story chilled your bones, do not let it vanish into silence. Subscribe, like, and share it, so others may hear the warning. Some treasures are not gifts. They are curses. And if you dare to seek them, you may find only ruin. Now tell me, would you have had the strength to burn it? Or would greed have claimed you too? Comment your thoughts. And remember, my darlings, evil often hides where we least expect it.